In 1985, Steve Jobs was fired from his own company. Imagine this. You build an empire from scratch, turn it into a $2 billion, 4,000-employee behemoth, and then you get kicked out by your own board of directors. He was ousted by the man he hired, John Sculley. In an instant, everything Steve Jobs had built his entire life came crashing down. But the shred thing is, this could be the best thing that ever happened to him. Sounds rare, right? This is not a failure story. This is the story of how a tragedy turned into the greatest comeback in history, transforming Apple from the brink of bankruptcy into a trillion-dollar empire and changing our world forever. Let's see how a man who fell from the top could come back and conquer the world. It all started in a garage in 1976. There, two men named Steve Jobs, a crazy visionary, and Wozniak, a genius engineer, created the Apple I computer. Jobs saw the future, and Wozniak made it happen. Success came fast. The Apple II, released a year later, created a global sensation, transforming Apple from a garage project into a real force. In just a few years, Apple was a billion-dollar company, and Steve Jobs became a millionaire, an icon. He was a tough boss. Everything had to be perfect or go away. But there was a big problem. Jobs' genius came at a price. His vision was the only thing that mattered to him, and he would blow everyone else away. Apple's board of directors, while admiring him, feared his temperament. They needed someone with experience to rein him in. That person was John Sculley, the brilliant CEO of Pepsi. Jobs personally recruited Sculley with a crazy question. Do you want to spend the rest of your life selling sugared water? Or do you want to come with me and change the world? And Sculley chose to change the world. At first, everything was great. Jobs poured his heart into the Macintosh, a true revolution. But the Macintosh was a sales flop. Sales were low. The Jobs-Sculley feud explodes. Jobs wants to slash the price of the Macintosh and go all in. Sculley wants to play it safe. Two visions. One company. The power struggle begins, and it is about to send Apple into its biggest storm yet. 1985. The battle comes to a critical potential. The relationship between Jobs and Sculley has broken down. Sculley, with the support of his board, decides it is time to act. A board meeting is called, and it is effectively a trial. Sculley makes his case, and nearly everyone sides with him. They think Jobs is wrong. The fate is sealed. The board of directors stripped Steve Jobs of all his power. He was removed from the Macintosh project, his brainchild. He was essentially made king without a throne in his own kingdom. For Jobs, it was an incredible humiliation. He tried to oust Sculley, but failed miserably. And then, the unbelievable happened. Steve Jobs, at age 30, was officially fired from Apple. Yes, you heard that right. He said bitterly, "How can you get fired from a company you founded?" The shock was so great that he broke a photo of him with Sculley. Years later, he described that moment. The heaviness of success was replaced by the lightness of being a beginner. It freed me to enter one of the most creative periods of my life. But then, it was hell. Apple, after removing its soul, began to go downhill. The company made one mistake after another and began to die. And Steve Jobs, after selling all his shares, was faced with the question, what now? He fell into the abyss. But from there, an extraordinary journey of rebirth began. Kicked out of Apple, nitrogen monoxide problem? Steve Jobs did not fall. He did what he did best. Start from screen. First was Next Computer, founded with $7 million of his own money. The goal was extremely ambitious, to create the most powerful computers in the world. The Next Computer was truly a masterpiece. It was so powerful that it was used to invent the World Wide Web. Unbelievable. However, commercially Next was a failure. The computers were too expensive, too ahead of their time, but the technology behind them would be the key to his comeback. Remember that. At the same time, he bought a small graphics company for $10 million and renamed it Pixar. Pixar initially sold only hardware, but inside they had a talented animation team. One of their short films, Tin Toy, won an Oscar. Jobs realized Pixar's true potential was in storytelling, decided to bet all on animation. And in 1995, Pixar partnered with Disney to release Toy Story, the movie that changed everything. Toy Story was revolutionary. Pixar went on to release a series of classic films, becoming the most successful animation studio in the world. And guess what? In 2006, Disney bought Pixar for $7.4 billion. This deal made Steve Jobs the biggest individual shareholder of Disney, from fired to a force in Hollywood. Crazy, the journey with Next and Pixar taught Jobs invaluable lessons. He became more mature, more patient, and ready for a comeback. And on the other side, Apple, his brainchild, was dying and needed him more than ever. While Jobs was riding high, Apple was in crisis. By 1996, the company had only 90 days of cash left. In desperation, Apple's CEO did the only thing he could. He bought Steve Jobs Next for $429 million. The idea was to get the technology, but more importantly, the deal paved the way for the king to return. In early 1997, Jobs returned. Just a few months later, he convinced the board to fire the old CEO and make him interim CEO. He was officially back on the throne. His first move? Huge cleanup. He cut 70% of the product lines. Boom, gone. Let's focus on just a few core things and do them really well. Next, a bigger shock. He announced that Apple had received a $150 million investment from its arch rival, Microsoft. The audience booed, but Jobs knew he had to do it to save the company. But the most important move was a rebranding move. He launched the legendary Think Different advertising campaign. It didn't sell products. It sold an idea, celebrating people crazy enough to think they could change the world. It lifted Apple's spirits. The foundation was laid. Now it was time to rebuild the empire. With the foundation solid, Steve Jobs began the greatest show in history. The first brick, the iMac, in 1998. In a sea of boring beige computers, the iMac appeared like a bomb. It wasn't just a computer, it was a statement. The iMac sold millions and saved Apple from bankruptcy. Then, 2001, the iPod. 1,000 songs in your pocket? It became a global phenomenon and changed the music industry forever. And then, iTunes Store launched, allowing you to buy music for 99 cents, dealing a huge blow to piracy. And then 2007, the moment. On stage, Jobs said, "Today Apple is reinventing the phone." And he introduced the iPhone. An iPod, a phone, an internet device, all in one. It changed the world, and it didn't stop there. 2010. Jobs went on to create the iPad. Okay, many were skeptical, but the iPad quickly became the best-selling device in Apple's history. iMac, iPod, iPhone, iPad, hit after hit. They all carried Jobs' philosophy, simple yet powerful. He turned a company on the brink of bankruptcy into the most valuable technology company on the planet. Steve Jobs' journey is one of the greatest comeback stories in history. From a rejected genius, he returned and took Apple to unimaginable heights. He himself said that being fired from Apple was the best thing that ever happened to him. It freed me to enter one of the most creative periods of my life. What's the lesson here? Never give up. Sometimes life will hit you in the head with a brick, but keep moving forward. Find what you love, because the only way to do great work is to love what you do. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking. Don't settle. Steve Jobs' story shows that from the ashes, glory can be reborn, brighter than ever. What do you think about this crazy journey? Which lesson from his life inspires you the most? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you love extraordinary stories like this, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next videos. Thanks for watching.